Welcome back to the AI Executive Podcast, the show where we cut through the noise and bring you straight to the decision makers, strategists, and builders leading the AI transformation. I'm your host, Albert Ramos. Today's guest is someone I deeply respect and someone I'm proud to be building with. We're dropping this episode on a big day, the launch of Valisights, our AI powered strategic finance platform that is officially going to market. And thank you, White Glove, for the platform to announce. I'm right here with the founder of Valisights, Jason Wells. Jason is the chief AI officer at Now CFO, where he's revolutionizing how finance and accounting professionals leverage AI. He's also the president of Adaptable AI, founder of AI Dev Lab, and managing director of M West Ventures, where he helps organizations implement AI that actually works, the true AI integrator. With executive and advisory roles at Sony Pictures, wow, Sprint, Telstra, Newsweek, and others, Jason has built deep AI expertise across finance automation, machine learning, generative AI, and NLP. From global operations to startup innovation, he's seen how to turn ambiguity into breakthroughs and how to drive AI adoption that delivers my favorite measurable impact. And today, with Valisights and the launch, we're bringing those insights and those automation tools, intelligent tools, directly to the CFO's desk, eliminating the finance busy work, surfacing insights faster, and giving finance leaders the clarity they need to drive strategy. So important. Jason, welcome to the AI Executive Podcast. And let me just say, thanks for being on this ride with me. Let's get into it.
Wow, you make me sound so cool. I'm going to make my kids listen to that
I
because
love it.
they just think I'm a nerd.
Well, there's nothing wrong with nerds, kids. There you have it. Your pops is doing a lot out there. And I mean it, Jason, the true AI integrator. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today. And thank you.
Awesome, me as well. Looking forward to it.
Well, speaking of the big day, the Valisights launch, go to market. Today, we are so excited. You and I and the entire team, and I know the rest of the audience will be excited too once they get to learn more about it. So let's talk about it. What gap in the market did you see that brought Valisights to life, and how does Valisights solve that pain point?
Well, we had the great opportunity of working with over 500 different consultants, financial consultants, working with Now CFO. They have an amazing team across the country where they're in the books every single day. And we asked them, what do you want? What do you need? What is, how can AI help? And we actually threw away the concept of AI, just said, where do you need help?
I love
And,
that.
and they were spending 20, 30 hours going through and preparing the financials, but so much so that they couldn't get to the advisory piece where they're actually the most valuable as a somebody who's expert in this. So often accountants, financial professionals are in their spreadsheets without the chance to kind of come up above and say, here's what we learned, here's what we need to do, here's the advisory that we can give you, the real expertise. That was the gap that we took to solve with Valisights, is really saying, okay, rise above the daily into how do you use the numbers to drive your business? How do you, in some cases, save hundreds of thousands or find opportunities that you might be missing? So that's really where we're solving, is that taking the numbers and really making them valuable.
I love it. This really hits home for me. It's a true gut check, but really very inspiring and exciting. As a fractional CFO myself, I was that example where we're spending hours and hours in a spreadsheet building models and forecasts. And when I had an opportunity to spend time with you and learn more about Valisights and how those things can now be done with AI and the proprietary tools from Valisights and Adaptable AI, it can now be done in minutes, if not hours. And it's so exciting. It allows for less doing and more thinking, more advisory, more strategy. And to your point, finding opportunities instead of figuring out the crunching of the numbers, which that is important, but it's not the most important if you're truly trying to grow and thrive in your finance career. So I'm really excited for those finance leaders to hear what's going on here. Excellent. You've worked closely with White Glove AI. Again, thank you to White Glove AI and the AI Executive Podcast for allowing us to use this platform to chat about the launch of Valisights. You know that White Glove AI powers the AI Executive Podcast, but also the morning show. And they are big believers. The CEO, Nick James, and the team are big believers in scaling smart and using AI across organizations, right? What do you admire most as you've learned more about Nick and the team at White Glove AI? What do you admire most about what they're doing? And how do you see them complementing tools like Valisights or even tools within adaptable AI, the adaptable AI umbrella and that entire AI ecosystem?
Yeah, love these guys. I tell you what, this is what companies need, and the role that I had to go in and play with now CFO as a chief AI officer, really as a fractional chief AI officer. You can see I've got my hands full with a few things.
That's right.
So, but the way White Glove looks at this, right, is that they help you cut through, look at it from a strategic level down to an implementation level.
Right.
What I really love and admire about what they do is they don't necessarily say, "Hey, we're going to solve it all for you." They have a network of partners and implementation tools. They can help you figure out, "Hey, these are the best tools. We don't even have to build it ourselves," right? So getting you to usefulness fast, because they're not saying, "Hey, we're going to build this thing from scratch." They're saying, "Let us guide you through this." Really the white glove treatment, right? I'm going to take care of it and solve that. So I really love that. We've collaborated together, and that collaboration has just been fantastic because in some cases they wanted to tap into some of the financial expertise that we had.
Right.
And in other cases, we need to tap into some of their coding expertise. So love what they're doing with data and that whole approach to thinking about it from, look, let's take care of it. Let's handle it all the way through. So
I love it.
great
That's
work.
great. And thanks for sharing that. And I love that you and Nick had an opportunity to meet, and now both organizations in its different fashions with different products are working together and helping those enterprises that are leaning into AI. That's what we've been doing on these shows, is challenging enterprise organizations out there. Just lean in, learn more, but tap into some research, not necessarily having to build it themselves, right? That's very hard to do, right? And it's costly, but it's actually tapping into the experts like you, Jason, and Nick out there, and some others. And so we're really excited about continuing to share the pie. It's okay to do. So you've led AI transformations across global enterprises, not just domestic, but globally. And I know I didn't list it all out in that bio, right? I had a lot
Please
more.
don't.
I cut it down a little bit. What's the biggest difference, right? You're a big proponent on just cutting through the noise. And I'm just going to say it this way. There's a lot of garbage out there, right? And we say that on our morning show, cut through the noise and the hype. Let's talk about real practical, executable. What's the biggest difference, in your opinion, between AI that gets talked about and hyped up and AI that actually works?
So, we found that the most success on a global company level happens in the business unit, not at corporate.
Right.
Corporate has other things that they need to think about, right? It's laying out a strategy. But really, we found that the best work gets done down at the business, at the point of contact, where people are doing the work. That's what we found, because AI is also a product. You've got to, instead of just thinking, in fact, AI should be ignored at the beginning. It's talk about the problems, look at the opportunities, and see if you can address those. And I think a lot of people miss the fact that AI is not just a bunch of math or ChatGPT. It's really about who's the user that it impacts. And so when you get to a business unit level, and even a startup, it is about who is touching it. I often say to people, you've heard the statement, in battle, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. And I'll say, no AI model or no AI product survives first contact with the user. You just have to know that it's an interaction. This is new for a lot of people. So that's why I say bring it down as low into the organization, into where the work is being done. And that's where you get the most value. I found that sometimes it's just a job to be done. Task. Start with that, create some value, and then move on. That's my approach.
I love that. And one of the things that I've learned many things, but one of the things I've learned about just spending time with you is your quick ability to identify that one pain point, right? And not get distracted by doing everything all at once, but focusing on that one pain point. And so, what's your recommendation for those listeners out there? And I know there's finance listeners, but there's really across the board. We have CHROs on here in the whole gauntlet of C suite. We have developers, the technical, and then we have the first timers on here as well listening. What's your advice to them on? You mentioned don't start with AI, right? It's actually start with the business unit and that root cause, that pain point. How do they go do that?
I think it's an evaluation of your day, right?
Oh, I love that.
If you're going to say, "I wish I could get more done. I wish I could do this," or "I want to," or "We've got this problem." Think through how to solve it first, right? And very often when it comes to AI, you have to map out how would I solve this problem? I would do this step, then this step, then this step. It could be that AI would really only make one part of that step. Don't try to force fit everything. AI is going to solve everything.
Right.
Usually what happens is you put too much reliance on it and it doesn't work out quite the way you want it. So if you break it down into pieces, when I was a management consultant, my first project was in Venezuela. And my first thing they had me do was sit next to the payroll department. Crazy enough, I'm in Venezuela, sitting next to the payroll department, and I had a stopwatch, and I'm timing everything they do, and I'm just writing down notes. That's all. I did that for 3 days with each different department. But it's kind of like that, understanding here is my gap, or here is my in a manufacturing world they'll call it your bottleneck. I'm doing great, and then this thing takes me this much time, and then I'm doing that. So a lot of time there is opportunity in time saving. That's a great place to look, right? Or there's an opportunity. There's things I couldn't get to. So for in Valisights perspective, right, where this came to is, hey, we're spending 20 hours preparing all the financials. By the time we are ready to deliver that to the client, we've used all the budget. So we can't get to the insights and the reporting and these things to be able to show them and communicate. And so that was how we found that. Is they said, look,
So good.
I wish I could get this, but I couldn't. I'm like, let us take this back to the laboratory and see what we can do. So
I love that.
hopefully that helps.
No, that's so helpful. And for those listening and even watching, I'd highly recommend rewinding and going back to that because it's so key. It's putting on that engineer hat, right? And manually chunking, right? It doesn't mean go AI first, to Jason's point. No, you need to understand the process first so you truly understand where that pain point is. And that requires you to map it out, right? So maybe not the stopwatch nowadays, maybe it's the cell phone with the clock, right? Or it's just observing in chunks in that storyline, in that workflow, right? In those pieces. And then to your point, right? That great example of that finance executive, maybe a fractional CFO out there that has a handful of clients. They're spending hours and hours of building and crunching, yet there's nothing left to actually provide what I love is the now what? So what? You got this data over to me. You have this cash flow statement over to me. You got me these beautiful 3-statement models, the P&L, the balance sheet, the cash flow statement, what have you, or you've done a great gap analysis. Okay, now what? So what? There's a lot of CEOs out there. I know it. I've seen it. They get the result, month end close. They get their financial reporting. Oh, I guess it's okay, and file it away. There's nothing useful about it, and sometimes not even looked at, right? Unless you need to report out quarterly, and now it's like we need to create a presentation quick, fast. Let's do it. So you're spot on. It's that now what, so what that's so crucial that Valisights is also supporting with, because it's not even getting to that quicker, it also provides those insights and a lot of the reporting and within the product, which is great too. So
I gotta stay on this because this is so, like, I've spent so much time with my head in with accountants and CFOs and controllers that I figured out how to explain this because, so I have a finance degree from Wharton as well. So I understand finance, but still I don't spend my day in spreadsheets.
right,
So what happens is when you spend your day in spreadsheets and you deliver a spreadsheet, what what most accountants don't realize is when a CEO looks at this, it's like reading a foreign language. And what they can do is they can read English, and so they can see revenue. Okay, I got that. Profits or loss. And so they can see a couple words and they can make sense of it. But they don't really even consume or absorb the rest of the information. And there is the so what in there. So anyways, that's what we solve with Valisights, is really thinking about the so what, right? What do I do?
exactly. You wrote, and I saw this on your LinkedIn, which I love your posts. Actually, that's where we connected. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. That's where we connected at first. And you wrote, in quote here, ambiguity isn't a problem. It's your fast track to breakthroughs. I remember reading that and I came back to it multiple times. I'm like, wow, it's like, this is someone I can relate to. How do you apply that when deploying AI solutions?
So, when I said that I was struggling with ambiguity. I was mired in ambiguity. And I tend to spend, having been on the cutting edge of technology, there's a lot of ambiguity. Because what's going to happen next? Which is the best model? What do you do here? What do you do there? But the reason I say it's the fast track to breakthroughs is because it forces you to say, if you spend the time on it, it forces you to break things into pieces, right? And and just break it down, because otherwise it's too much of a mess. It's just kind of messy. And so if you can structure it, that's what allows you to say, that's what I need to focus
Right.
on. Right. So that's what I love about it, is it causes you to think instead of the routine, right? When you have the routine, there's no ambiguity. You don't have to think. And this is what I love. This is what creates the AI breakthroughs. This is what creates the Valisights, is what do I think? Just solving that and thinking. So that's what I love about it, even though I'll still, in the middle, I still get lost, frustrated.
Switching gears here a little bit, because I've heard you chat a little bit about this, and I know you work behind the scenes a lot with these types of features and tools, but you talked about how you're starting to see, and I'm seeing the same thing, AI note takers showing up on calls more than people. And I think it's going to become even more prevalent. And so, what should companies be doing right now? We have a mixture in the bag. It's companies that completely, nope, not happening, no AI note takers. So everyone, I still see it. They're still writing down. I'm like, oh man, your wrist still must hurt. Like I haven't written in a while, so, which is maybe a nice, unfortunate lost art form. But we have these AI note takers. What should companies be doing to balance utility with data protection?
So this is a great question, and probably the answer is different for every organization. There are people that are in highly sensitive areas and people that are less sensitive. But you do have to be careful, right? There is this risk in AI. You take any of the free versions, your information that you're using in those are being fed right into training models, and with the right kind of hacks with prompts, your data could be at risk. So that's fair. But I think a lot of companies, first step is, what is your policy? What do you think? Communicate that to your organization. Define it for your organization. Don't just let it, it's Wild West out there. I get it. But what is it? What is your position? Generally, I'm a AI enthusiast, right? So I look for ways to find, how do we adopt that? So one of the things we use SalesKick. So SalesKick uses the native recording. So you already have recording functions in Teams, in Zoom, in Google Meet. All that recording is already happening. You actually don't need a note taker per se. So that protects you right there. It's like, okay, I'm going to use my native. You've already agreed to use that. So I'm going to use that, keep that in-house. I control that. And then we connect that into SalesKick. And SalesKick is a secure AI tool that then takes that, and it can be, hosted and secured, and it uses that data. But rather than who's going to get this, was it just anyone on the call? I actually control that. As the organization, I control that. So you can make those decisions, and you got to find the right tools. And I'm sure there's others like SalesKick. But what we've done there is then let you choose what to do, who gets what. And you can even do the automations of actions, and you get more than just taking notes, right? So that's what we did at across a number of organizations now. CFO is using a secure environment, and I think that's important. But again, step back and say, what's important to you as a company? But I find very few companies have a policy.
It's so
What do
true.
they believe?
What do they believe, and what's the governance, right? Is there an AI committee? And you're right. What are they telling employees? I was just on a conversation with Mr. Paul Carney, right? And who's a tech enthusiast, actually a finance background as well, but a CHRO in the finance space. And he was talking a lot about that is, the future is the competitive advantage is not only how do you utilize this technology, but if you're using the technology, speaking from a talent acquisition, meaning you will be attracting great talent with this competitive edge. If you're behind the curve or choosing not to lean in, there's great talent out there that wants to be a part of this revolution, that will see that you're promoting an anti AI culture, and they won't want to work for your organization. So it's something for those executives out there, especially those that are involved in talent acquisition, finding the best talent. And we know when you have the best talent, you'll have the best experience for your customers, your members, what have you. And then from there, have great financial results. But it really starts with the finding the best people. And if you're not showing that you're innovative, that you're using this technology to help the mental wellness of your employees, or even help their productivity, right, their development, their career pathing, I think it's going to be a big miss. And that's something that I was chatting about the other day with Paul. And so I'm hearing what you're saying too. It's really about, what are you telling your employees? What is your policy? What is your AI governance? Do you even have an AI committee? It's really interesting to think about.
So let me give you another example. A lot of people, they don't have any policy, right? Or if they have a policy, they say don't use AI. And I just saw a report on this. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but like they'll say for companies that say don't use AI, 50% of their employees are using AI, or
Exactly.
some large number of people are still using it. So what we found is that if you have a policy and you're saying, okay, what do I want to do? It's best to give them a controlled environment. They'll say, okay, use AI, but then if you're going to use AI, if you use the free version of ChatGPT or you use the Gemini, these things, that information is not yours. It's out in the market. So
Right.
you have to pay to upgrade to get more security. Well, now the employees has to pay it, or is the company going to pay it? And do you pay all these other ones? And so we went with a Terrace, TERIS, Terrace AI. They have a secure environment, right, where that can be protected and it's not being passed to the other algorithms. So again, I just say think about it, be deliberate. And think about it, right? And come up with something. And that's where I see a lot of people asking me, "Hey, Jason, like, what should I even do with AI? Like, what should we do? How do we start? What do we do?" And that's
Well, let's turn the attention back to Valisights, because we're talking about sensitive, confidential financial information, right? So yes, we have a lot of finance executives that they're trying to get their hands on this. We've been chatting with a lot of people, and we know after this true launch there'll be even more. But look, here's the deal: their partner in crime is that good old CIO. I always say that their CIO who's nudging them like, hey, wait a second, we don't need this data getting out anywhere, right? We don't want our competitors to have this private confidential, sensitive information. And so, there's a lot of skepticism or even fear with using AI within financial tools, or let's call it Excel spreadsheets. So let's walk me through how Valisights actually protects against that. So no need to be skeptical when using the Valisights strategic finance tools. What's the playbook for turning this fear into actually, no, this is a great opportunity and you are protected?
Yeah, so it takes a little bit more work than just popping it up.
Right.
So in our data stack, we run a cleansing piece. So any information that's passed is regenerated into a synthetic format, so that the actual the PII, the personally identifiable information, the company name, all those things don't get passed to any kind of an AI model. So they're protected there. And that was kind of the first step we had to do, is just like, look, let's not just encrypt things. Let's not just say it's in a secure server. Let's not even make it available into any AI model, right? So that's one of the first steps. And so what happens is, if you've got a company name, when that passes through, and if we run any AI model on it, that doesn't go through. It just takes the numbers, the data, and the information, right? So a number of steps like that, where we run that through essentially a filter that says no PII information goes in, no company information goes in. Now comes out the insights and the results, and that gets fed back in, right, at the point of where it's delivered. So, we had to go through those steps. And you can get even more secure. And we've done this with companies where they say, I don't even want this in the cloud. And so then you move that to an on-premise solution, right? So that can sit where, whether you've built the models and fine-tune those models can sit within your own servers. So there's different levels of security. Yeah, and that's true. And I think one of the things to recognize is you can decide the level of security that you want. There are a lot of options, and it does cost more. It's more development. You have to work with your internal teams. So it kind of depends. Everyone, again, you have to make these decisions on your own. Very often, that's what I spend the time talking to people about. Let me help you make this decision. Let's think through these things. Where do you want to draw the line? So that's a lot of it.
What's exciting about one of the tools and products within the Valisights suite there of services is the cash flow side. And, as a fractional CFO, and I know there's many out there, fractional, interim, or just true CFO, cash flow is a big one. But aside from cash flow, I really like talking about leakage too. And when you've actually come up and you've run the models using the tools with your team, what are some of the other ahas that you've seen that is a common trend that maybe finance leaders are just missing across the board? And the actual AI tools have actually shown, hey, this is a common opportunity when working with many clients out there, many organizations. What pops up using the Valisights tools?
So we have there's two products within the suite of Valisight tools, and one of them is a benchmarking analysis. So it's a comparable against companies in their region, their size, and their industry. So you can compare against. Very often, what we'll see is that company A is way off of the benchmark in cost of goods sold, for example. And we'll look at that, and at first we think, oh, shoot, we did something wrong. This doesn't look wrong. Like this is screwed up. Right. And then we sit down and we talk. So very often in kind of our first iterations, we'll have an accountant that's reviewing and going through. So we always have a human in the loop piece of this and saying, okay, let me gut check this, right? Let's not just kick these things out. And like 4 out of those 5 cases, we found that basically the information is reported in the wrong category. And then once we start to get clue of that, then we run this other analysis, which is our gap. So it's a gap assessment. And it looks at, are you following the generally accepted accounting procedures, right? And when we run that analysis, it will actually look at all the FASB rules, and it will identify, hey, this is an area that appears that may be out of whack or it's out of line. And so it'll go through and identify, okay, this is the rule, this is what we should be following here. Because we want finances, we want the accounting, we want those reports to actually help us run the business. And that's why we have GAAP, so that company A and company B can talk to each other and know they're talking about the same thing. Revenue recognition is often a problem. We see people that think they're doing accrual accounting, but they're really doing some mix between cash and accrual.
Right.
So you actually don't have the numbers, and that's where you're leaking. You don't have the actual correct numbers in the right place. So the gap assessment, the benchmark, that all helps substantially to help you find those areas to say, this is where we've got a problem. In some cases, we're even finding potential fraud, and it'll flag. And so we've done a different fraud analysis on top to say, these are areas that you might want to look at.
And I'll tell you, just coming from the finance space, and other than those that play in that space, it's not the sexiest of topics, right? When we talk about loss prevention and leakage. And that's what I love about the tools, right? From not just the gap analysis, but the assessments or assess that we're doing, and the metrics piece as well, the benchmarking. That's a big one, right? Is identifying the leakage, what you weren't even looking at. A lot of the times we're looking for revenue generating opportunities, or maybe we're looking at those big expense items like payroll and or capex or other expense items. What we're not identifying most of the time for many of us out there is the leakage, the actual leakage that is right under your nose but masked somehow, right? It's flying under the radar. What these tools allow you to do through Valisights is actually identify, again, not only fast, but identify the specifics, and then going back to the so what, now what, right? Jason, is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, and that's it. And here's the way I think about how to use AI again in these things is it can go and cover a lot more information than you will ever want to, and we generally try to position it as almost like an intern or an analyst, where you're the senior executive, you have a lot of experience. You say, hey, go run this analysis. The AI can do a bunch of analysis. It can do more than you ever wanted to and come back. And what I look at it is as when you take that, it is, hey, here's a suggestion, here's something. Some of the things that you may have context, right, that maybe an AI model doesn't have, that you can say, oh, okay, no, I know what that is. But other times it's pulling out, it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, that keeps coming up. I see it. And so we manage that, and we have a relationship with AI. It's not, hey, let me throw it over the fence and have AI solve it. So I don't even tell people to put all your trust in it, right? Again, it's doing a lot of the heavy work and heavy lifting for you and giving it to you in a prioritized way, in a way that you can make quick decisions or good, clear decisions.
And I mentioned it earlier, a couple of the things that I love about you is you're the true AI integrator. And what I liked about you too is you are not one to say, hey, AI is here to replace. You've never once said that in the time that I've known you. And I have my opinions, right? And sometimes I get a little extreme. This is going to replace. But you've stayed very consistent with, no, that's not. It's a tool. And I appreciate that about you. And tying this into Valisights, you actually mentioned something earlier that really caught my attention is now you can take this and work with this to go think, to go advise, to do strategy. And you've posted a lot about that too. You've mentioned that AI isn't a job killer, it's a value amplifier. So can you break down whether it's Valisights or some projects over at Adaptable and AI Dev Lab where this has been seen in the context of finance and ops?
Let me give you an in progress work we're doing right now with Better Accounting. Better Accounting has hundreds of clients. Now they do bookkeeping for the most part, and taxes. So very often they're working with a client maybe once a year to get their taxes done. But usually they have a mess that they have to clean up at the end of the year because they didn't get their taxes ready. So and their clients usually have a pretty low budget. They're smaller companies, they're sub $5 million in revenue, and so they're working with them, and so one of the things we're doing with them is augmenting what they can do, right? And how do we augment that within the budget that their clients have? And and now what we're able to do is run out, instead of maybe a monthly report and analysis of everything, do a quarterly analysis, right? Now I'm just doing a quarterly check-in. But it's, very budget friendly, but it's checking in. The nice thing is that we're able to add tax advice along the way. Oh, here's a flag. Now that gives Better Accounting the opportunity to talk to their clients to say, let's actually prepare for taxes rather than do this, April 14th. And so we're augmenting their role by automating some pieces, using the AI intelligence, and flagging those opportunities. And now every quarter they can have this come out to them, and they're ready for tax season. They've got the information, and they even have been proactive where they never really had that opportunity, or very few people want to take that time to do that. So great example.
That's a great example, and it's so timely too, right? I think at this point of recording, it's about 13 days till tax day, right? So, and we're all wishing, man, I wish I would have done this a year ago, and I wish I would have been proactive. And so this is a good lesson for us all, especially those in the finance space that deal with a lot of this, not only for your own business, but for your clients, is you now have an opportunity to catch these things earlier and deal with it now versus, a day before April 15th. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So pivoting a little bit, right? And I didn't mention this because I know from a finance lens to a tech lens to AI enthusiast, right? The integrator, you've built a lot. I didn't mention that in the beginning of the show. We've had some conversations about this, and you've been a part of a lot of what I would call startups, right? And the building or the early adoption phase of those businesses, right? In the early phases, which is great. What separates an AI early adopter from an organization stuck in what I would call the AI pilot purgatory?
Mm. So, um, generally, what separates it is if you're trying to dictate it from the top, um, and you're going too broad in the pilot. So, what I found, and startups will have this problem as well, but large corporations, and and so I mentioned before, in some of the large corporations, it's down in the business unit, it's down in the use case. But my suggestion is in that pilot, make it as small as possible, right? Frankly, here's what I tell people: you should be able to get value from it within 6 weeks. If you can't get something valuable out of it within 6 weeks, you're either thinking too hard about it, or it's not something you should be spending your time on. Not for a pilot. A pilot shouldn't last a year,
Right.
6 months. You want to get something that's in and it's valuable and it's usable. And in today's world of AI, there are a lot of tools. They come out every day. People's minds are swimming with different tools. So I have to stay up with this all the time because there's so many opportunities. The video generation that's coming out, the voice cloning there's so many different things. So again, don't try to build it yourself. Just pilot it as a prototype. Don't worry about scalability. Don't worry about, expansion throughout the organization. Can it help this one or these 5 people do something that are indicative of other people, right? And dial it in for them as small as it can be.
You posted about something recently that actually it's right up this alley, and I haven't had an opportunity to ask you, so I thought I'd use this platform to do it because it's very similar to what you're saying, but it was a little bit more specific. You mentioned three phases of AI maturity. You said there was phase one, ad hoc, phase two, scalable pilots, phase three, AI driven. And so, how do companies, and in your work, as you're advising companies, consulting companies, how do companies identify where they are and what's the best move to level up?
Well, I think it starts. You start out with a directive, right? What is your strategy? What is your intent? Now, the ad hoc is somebody in the organization doing something which nobody at the top knows that anything's happening at all. Now, that's not bad. That's something that's happening, but that's at a different level of maturity, right? It's not an organizational move. It is one individual that's doing something. But there's a lot to be learned from this individual to share with that individual. And so the ad hoc doesn't get that benefit. It's just somebody doing this and somebody doing that. Now, I don't want to have somebody at the top directing and managing everything, right? I don't think that's the right way to do it.
Right.
But knowing and having the directive and the initiative say, yes, let's do these ad hoc, let's do these things, and have some strategy and some plan, but not so overbearing that you treat it like a corporate initiative. It is a skunk works. It is a prototype. It's a pilot. So keep it small, but have a couple of those going. Once you move from there, right, then it's moves into that pilot phase, and you've got this kind of an orchestrated pilots going on. Rather than, again, I'm not trying to solve it at the top. I'm trying to lead it, guide it, and let it happen.
Right.
And then you start to become it. Then you learn. If you start at the top and say, this is who we are, this is our AI, we're an AI company.
Interesting.
I don't like that at all.
Oh, I love
because you don't know anything yet, really. Like,
I love that. That is so interesting because I think the sexy thing to do, right? The mainstream, the hot thing to do is, hey, we're AI first. We're AI driven. And you're right. It's like, well, I'd be a little afraid to be a leader if I'm not part of that committee that's saying that. Like, what do you mean by that? Because I haven't seen anyone do any type of discovery or observation, so I'm a little afraid.
yeah,
What does that mean? We're just going to be raining down, just lighting it up, AI everything, and it's really, I remember sitting at a boardroom table with you, and you said, a problem many companies face is they over automate, they over AI, and they do it just to do it. And you create far more chaos and problems than if you just simplified. And it's going back to your original point earlier is you got to know what the issue is first. You can't just go and automate to success or AI to success. It just does not work like that. You get more bottlenecks and break and bugs and issues when you play that game.
you might have heard me. I have some initiatives with other folks that I'm working with where I said, you've got 4 weeks and then it's hands off keyboard, right? Like, stop, no more development. Now you have to see and make sure that people are going to use this. If they don't like it, if it's ugly, if it doesn't work, find out why, but stop building. So only build the stuff that is going to be useful, and you only have this many more weeks. So I put these hard lines to help us say, okay, now we just have to listen, because it's customer interaction, user interaction, whether it's internal or external. That's where you find out it's rubber hits the road, right? So that's what I got to get to.
You just made me think of your AI data scientist. I want to give her a shout out, Natalie Rhodes, who has been with you hip to hip alongside with you. I call her the AI brain. I mean, she is so impressive.
Yeah.
You both are so vocal about and big on and promote data hygiene. So why is bad data still the thing that's killing most of the AI initiatives out there?
Because our data is messy all day. Most people are still working on 4 different systems. It's coming from 4 different places. We've seen it more and more and recognized it more and more as we've looked in Valisights, and we run an analysis. We share it with a client, and they say, "Wait, this looks wrong." And then, well, it is wrong because the data is it's classified. So let's look. So we run this chart of accounts analysis. So it takes some time. So we have a partner we work with in data transformation. So sometimes there's a whole, let's get our data into the right in the right data lake, so data warehouse. How do we want to structure that and clean that up? I'll give you an example of a project I did with a very large, I think they're all a Fortune 100 company based out of Germany. And this was unrelated to finance completely. It was generating scripts. So we trained this model to generate video scripts for their products.
Wow.
And so we ingested 500 examples and taught it. This is the brand voice. These are the words you say. This is how you do it. And there was this one phrase, actually this single word that they never wanted anyone to ever use, that our product can do this. They wanted to say our product does this, right? Never use the word can. So we spent weeks training the model, and it came out, and the first one looked great. Ran another example. Second one, wow, this is awesome. This is amazing. The third one, we're kicking it out, and it says, why does this say you can do this with our product? I thought we trained this on our data. Like, why is this? This is wrong. And like, our engineers were scratching their heads. Like, oh no. Like, I don't think I yelled at anyone, but I was like, what? So they went back and they looked. They couldn't find any problem in the code. And they started looking. We ended up finding out that of those 500 examples that we had, about 25% of them had the word, you can do this and you can do. So we just did a word search. We found like hundreds of uses. Like, we trained it on bad data, or we trained it on data that still had this. You know what we did? We corrected all of those samples and then retrained the model. We had to correct their bad habits in their data. So that's natural language data. That's just written data. But so it has that. You might change your brand and have a, but if you still have people following bad practices, you're gonna suck it into your AI.
Well, I've spent a lot of time on the data migration process, especially when changing ERPs. So for those listening, you probably just started sweating right now, or your heart starts sweating. Those are not fun, right? Because what you find a lot of the times is this data needs to be cleansed. So going back to Valisights, right? And there's the AR AP side, the month end close, right? The GL space, the accounting space, as I would call it. And then you transition into the strategic finance space, which, Valisights plays a heavy part in, but it still requires that front end to be sound, meaning clean data. So how do you make sure at Valisights, when you're working with clients, that we make sure that we fine tune this data for sure before driving it into the tools? Or are you driving in, and I know this just having used it, right? You really just need the GL, the chart of accounts, or COA as we would call it, right? ARAP for the most part, right? I'm simplifying it. But do you feed that into the proprietary tools that Valisights has first, or are you reviewing it, cleansing, and then using the tools? What's the best approach?
Well, the best approach is to have clean data. But from our perspective, you can't just look at a chart of accounts and so we use basically to run a full set of financial statements in our report. Like DeepSights is one of those that we do, where it looks at the past 13 months at least and looks at all that data. You can't look at a row of numbers and really say, is this off or is it on, right? So we at our stage, we're not doing the day-to-day accounting. But what happens is when we run it through the process and we generate the reports, that's when you're actually looking at it and identifying and say, this here is an area. Then you drill down. Because if I'm just looking at a row of numbers, you're not going to be able to pull it out.
Right.
And so now we take that, and then we can run, like I say, we run when there's questions, right? Then we'll suggest, let's do a benchmark analysis, because we know that's all gap compliant, or let's do a gap compliance analysis. And those things will help you dig in and deeper, clean up the data that's coming in. Now you get clean data so that you're making better decisions. Oh, yeah. So we don't manipulate the data out of the beginning, because this is what the company is providing. And to do this, like I said, all it requires is trial balance and chart of accounts, and boom, you're off and running, and you can generate this very quickly.
It amazes me how many decisions finance leaders, or those that are transferring, finance leaders that are transferring that knowledge to CEOs or COOs, how many decisions are being made off of a lack of data integrity, right? Meaning that the data is just not great, right? Or the data is incorrect, yet we're still basing our decisions off of that reporting. It still amazes me. And just, I know it truly is a tough, I would call it an arm wrestle. It is tough, right? To clean the data or to do these data migrations, but in the long run, you make much better. You feel great about it, first of all, and then you make far better, accurate decisions when you have clean data. And I know there's a lot of noise around that, but truly, Jason, you're, and I hope people rewind that one too. You got to clean it up, right? You got to find and be able to deep dive. And I know Valisights tools allows you to do that faster. And speaking of just the tools, right? What I'll do, Jason, actually in the editing portion of this, for those that need a visual and you're watching this, we'll make sure it's probably already doing it, right? By the time you're watching this, tools on the screen, and you can actually walk through or look through, we'll have it scrolling on here to see what we're like deep sites. One of my favorites, but I don't want to be biased here and tell you what my favorites are. For all the CFOs listening right now, Jason, what's one of the tools? What would you say is the best tool from the Valisights suite of services or products that they can go use this quarter, Q2, at the time of this filming, Q2, to get the fastest ROI? What are your thoughts?
Well, again, it kind of depends on where they are. Let's say they're preparing for a board meeting, and so they're getting their year-end statement. They want to put this all together. The deep sites is really, it looks at a 13-year. It's going to pull out, hey, these are the highlights. These are the lowlights. These are the recommendations of things you can do. So that like jumps right into what everybody is expecting. And then it basically takes those numbers, converts it into a number of different ways that you can look at from the charts as well as the recommendation. So a lot of us in the finance industry, we speak spreadsheet, but our CEO speaks bullet points. Right. I want 3 bullets. Tell me, give me the highlights, right? And so this helps us talk like that.
It goes back to that. It goes back to that. And sorry to cut you off there, Jason. I want to hit on this again for those controllers and FP&A leaders, right? Those CFOs out there. Again, this isn't to replace. This is to create value for you, to augment you so that you can go tell a story and spend more time in strategic creative mode, right? And even finding opportunities, right? But this allows you to get there faster. I love that. This is not to replace controllers and CFOs. This is to help you get in that boardroom faster, get to your CEO or COO that's asking for this, like, tell me what to do. What do I need to do? You get to them quicker. And by the way, you have it telling you what you should go do, and you get to create your own decisions as well, but you get to that faster. We make decisions faster. We make the right decisions faster with precision, right? And that allows your organization to grow, right? Be nimble, adapt, course correct, what have you, right? And it's what I love, because a lot of people are stuck. We're waiting. Sometimes these P&Ls or cash flow statements, they come out, a month, 2 months later. It's like, well, that's irrelevant now. We're 2 months past. I know there's a lot of people out there that feel that way. It's, man, I don't care about month end close because it's happening a month later. I'm getting my P&Ls a month and a half later. Like, it doesn't, at that point, it's irrelevant. Don't send it to me. Just file it away. Keep it in the ERP.
But to be clear, our goal is to make the accountant, the controller, the CFO, the hero. Make them look better than they are, right? Like, let's put.
We all want that.
That's what my old boss used to say. Let's put some lipstick on this pig. Get it out. So,
I love it. Yeah, and it's funny because in just us both coming from the world, we can agree that it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to build some of these models and to go through the statements or build the statements, build these from a cash flow, 13 some like 13-week cash flow forecast takes a lot of work to connect everything together, and especially if you're doing it from a 3 statement model, right? And that no longer needs to happen. And not just professionally, Jason. I even think the time that is now offloaded and this is good in our space, for finance leaders to go spend time with family, leisure. And I know that should be talked about too, right? It isn't about to go do more professionally, which is awesome, right? We're all ambitious, but it's like, hey, this now got done faster. I had the now what, so what conversations, and hey, you know what? I have some extra time to go spend time with my family, go to that ball game or what have you, and not have to worry about those deadlines of crunching numbers. And we've all
well,
been there.
to that point, we've heard that some of these analyses, this report, have saved upwards of 15, 20 hours of work they would have done to get it to this, and usually they say, it's just not worth doing that many hours. I can't put that much in. And so that is really a huge blessing for them in their lives. A lot of people that are burning the midnight oil.
Well, you're talking about almost 1,100 hours a year. Just think about that. And for all of us that will quickly do the math, think about that. Think about not just the time savings, but the dollar savings. Or for those that are fractional CFOs and you're maxed out, right? You can only do so much with the finite amount of time. Well, now if you're doing it at an eighth, a tenth of the amount of time, right? Think about your ability to acquire more clients and change businesses, change lives. I love that piece about it too. That's great. So you've worked with startups and you mentioned it earlier, Fortune 100 companies. How does AI implementation strategy shift across those environments in your experience?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't think it should.
Interesting.
I a good startup follows a lean startup methodology, which is evidence-based startup, right? So whatever you're doing, you're thinking about it from that perspective, right? You're actually getting evidence that what you're doing is having an impact. And when I talk to larger organizations, I tell them you have to behave like a startup. A startup has to think this way that says, first of all, do I have a product market fit? Do I have a pain that even matters? Does anybody care about it? Does it matter? So I've seen it done very differently at large corporations. I just don't support that. I don't want it to happen. When I worked for a very large telecom, I spent a year on a project as one of the product marketing managers. And after a year of my effort, and they had started before then, the company decided to write off the entire project, and it was $1 billion write-off, and they just scrapped it. It was just way too big, way too long, and they just could never get all the parts together. They didn't behave like a startup. In my mind, whether you're a large organization or small, the best way to do is think about the same fundamentals that you have to do when you're a startup. First, you say, do I know what problem I'm solving, right? Can I solve this in a unique, valuable way that can't be solved, by somebody else already, right? And will they use it, right? Is it actually valuable to them? And you start with that, and then you expand it out. You want a big opportunity, you want a big impact, but don't start here. And this is the problem with large companies. Start with a vision up here, but then bring it down to the actual users, the actual integration. I'll even say on data transformation, a lot of companies will say, I need to clean up my data. I need to do this. And I'll say, you do. There's no question. But let's actually start with something that pulls out the data. Let's manually grab the data from where you need it. Maybe it's only a subset of the data. Because what happens is when
we're talking heavy lifting.
When you do that, you learn how to structure your data better. so much more, right? So very experiential.
Yeah, there's something, and you mentioned it earlier on too about human in the loop, manual process. You don't hear that a lot right now, but it's so important because you're right, and you're just such a learner, and we could relate on so many levels there. You learn so much so that you do it better. It's not about just doing it fast; it's about precision and doing it more effectively. And so I love that. I have some fun questions for you,
All right.
and I know the audience is going to appreciate this just with your wealth of knowledge and experience, right? I had some heavy names that I mentioned earlier in your bio. Within some of those names, I even brought up Sony. What are some of the wins that you're most proud of so far in your career? Because I know you have much more to go, and I'm gonna get into that because there's a if you don't know anything about Jason, he's also an athlete, and we'll get into that. Don't think I won't, because I'm gonna talk about that because I think you're nuts. So we're gonna talk about that. What are some of the biggest wins that you're proud of so far in your career within the organizations that you've worked with?
Yeah. So I hadn't pre-thought about this one. Let's see. I was shipped from Hollywood. I worked for Sony Pictures in the Sony Pictures division, and we were in the cutting edge new digital content in the movie industry. What do we do? And so I was shipped off to London to run the operation from there because I had global responsibility as a senior vice president of all digital distribution.
Wow.
What were we going to do there? And it was a wild west, not too dissimilar from AI right now. As you can imagine, as everything is moved from just in the theaters to online to mobile phones and things like that.
Right.
And I remember, like, nobody had ever done this before, but it was crazy. We took 26 of our old movies and we packaged those up and we sold the streaming rights to a mobile operator in Italy and one in Korea. And from 26 old movies that we had in the library that nobody was buying anymore, we got those. We signed some pretty hefty multi-million dollar deals in the tens of millions. And that was like heyday, right? It was huge
Right.
because my division was a startup and we were trying to prove ourselves. And it was pretty awesome. But
So
it
cool.
took a lot of mind-numbing conversations at times.
I love it. No, that's great, and thanks for sharing that. And it's funny. It's the streaming wars of the past, and we're still in the streaming wars. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mentioned it. I'm going to bring it up. And everyone, hear me out here. Turn everything else off. You got to hear this. You're aside from everything else you've done, you're also a four-time Ironman. How is that? I told you I was going to come to something here. How has that endurance mindset influenced you in your professional life?
uh, uh, you can survive pain.
I
Just
knew
keep
it.
going. Just keep going. I think in one of my more recent Ironmans I did, I think it was Arizona, I thought at the end of the marathon, after a 2.5 mile swim, after a 112-mile bike ride, I was dying. My feet would just kill me. I looked down and I thought I would have pools of blood just coming out of my feet.
Oh
It
my
hurt so
gosh.
bad. I took them off at the end of the race and they weren't bleeding. I couldn't believe it. It was like it hurt so bad. And
Your brain's trying to trick you to stop, but let's make them
brain is
feel
trying to
pain.
get me to stop. And I think as you try new things, you know, you're going to hit roadblocks. You're going to hit pain. You're going to hit these brick walls. But it's the endurance, right? Of I'm going to stick with it. I may pivot. I might change, right? I might move directions, but I'm going to keep moving forward. And that is really, I mean, I don't really call myself an athlete. I just have this core competency. What makes me unique is I can endure low levels of pain for very, very many hours.
Love it. That's athletic, though. I'm going to still call you an athlete, so that's for me. So, you know this, and many of those out there don't. My mom actually is from Peru, so we're a Peruvian family, and I've told you a lot about my just love for the Peruvian culture, and especially I'm a big foodie or Peruvian foodie, lomo
Me
saltado.
too.
And don't make me speak Spanish on here because it was my first language, and I need to practice some more. I understand everything, but maybe that would be an episode. Actually, I'll just do it all in Spanish.
Vamos a hacerlo, todo en español.
Todo en español. So you have familiarity with Peru, and I'd love to hear from you. And what are some of your favorite memories and favorite aspects of the Peruvian culture?
Well, I spent 2 years as a missionary in Peru for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints, and then I actually went back and I worked there as a management consultant.
Wow.
Um, the people are amazing. The country is incredible. The sites, but the culture, the depth, the richness of that culture is just lovable, right? It's just fantastic. When I'd go to a house as a missionary, a lot of times people don't want to talk to you, right? But the door would be open and they would just say, "Come on in, pase, adelante." So you'd come in and then nobody would greet you because somebody might be in the back doing laundry, and then 10 minutes later they'd come in, their hands are wet, and you'd shake their elbow, and they would have a lovely conversation, and just lovely people, right? Those are the memories. Like, come into my house, take a rest, sit down. I'm out here working, doing my thing, but then they come out and make us some lemonade or chicha morada or
Oh,
maracuya.
did you ever have the famous classic? You might not have because you're very healthy. The sugar packed Inca Cola.
Oh, yeah, every day. Inca Cola
Yeah,
is
I love
the
it.
every Inca Cola. I just had some last week, so
Oh, I'm jealous. I am jealous. It's funny. My wife has learned how to make lomo saltado, and I'll tell you, I'll never tell my mom this, and my wife's Italian, but I don't know what she does, but it's one of the best. So I'll make sure the next time you're over,
I love
my
it.
wife we'll have her cook it up, and she does it fresh off the pan each time. I mean, it's next level. Well, that's great. So not only the AI integrator, the four-time Ironman, but you have that Inca culture with you as well. So I love that. That's great. I know this was I know you're a busy man. We've chatted about a lot here. Really excited about the launch of Valisights. Anything else that you'd like to share, sir, around the tools that Valisights has within its suite that the CFO, the controller, or FP&A leader can use, or if they're interested in learning more, where can they go, and how can they reach out to you or the Valisights team?
Yeah, happy to talk to anyone as they're exploring. And I say my first piece of advice is, whether it's Valisites or something else, just try it.
Right.
Get out there, get your hands dirty, get messy, make mistakes. You know, that's the best way to learn, because this is here to stay, and there's a lot of opportunities. So I say, just make mistakes, get out there. Valisites is kind of spell how it says. We'll probably put this in the show notes, valisights.com. You can go and get information. You can reach out to me on my LinkedIn profile as well. Happy to connect, happy to talk through war stories or problems or opportunities or questions. Just explore, because that's where I have the most fun, is really just exploring how to solve problems and get to these opportunities that are available.
So good. Well, Jason, I know the audience will agree with me. So much value packed into this episode. Truly next level. Your ability, as we always say on our morning show and on these podcasts, are there on LinkedIn and Spotify, YouTube X. We really want to cut through the hype and the noise of AI, and you've really done that for us today, and have challenged the audience in a lot of ways, and have also taught how to in a lot of ways too, which is interesting. It's an AI show, and we're telling people, hey, wait a second, before you do AI, right? Here's what you should do prior to. And I absolutely love that because it's truly spot on, right? So that we get AI traction and what that should look like. Truly, that's exactly what this show and our platform is all about, and why I truly believe not just adaptable, but why Valisights is going to change how finance leaders do work. I'm really, really bullish about it. And I'm thankful that you and Natalie and team have set out to do this over the last couple of years as you've been building and learning. And thank you to now CFO for being that partner as well to learn from and with. Thank you to White Glove AI again for this platform to chat about this, because this is an industry changing event. So really excited about it. Well, everyone, that's a wrap for this episode of the AI Executive Podcast. If you're ready to unlock clarity, as I mentioned, eliminating that busy work and putting AI to work inside of your finance stack, make sure to go to those links, valisights.ai.com. There, we'll put it in the show notes as well, and how you can link up with Jason and team. Until next time, I'm Albert Ramos, your host. Thank you so much for listening.